right, so we're talking about Sun in Aries and the 3 stages of Sun in Aries. And one thing that's important to realize, you might want to, at some point, if you haven't already done so, listen to the section on the 3 stages of the Sun sign. But it's important to realize that in this system of astrology, a person stays the same sign for a long series of lifetimes and goes through 3 stages, and each stage lasts for 3 or 4 lifetimes. So when we're talking about these different stages, you are going to probably recognize yourself and or other people you know, if you know any Aries people, at a certain stage of development. Their personality is going to fit one of these stages. So before a person is starting into the sign of Aries, they come from a place where there's a tremendous feeling of unity of life. And when we're in between lifetimes, we all experience the unity of life. But Aries experiences it with a tremendous love and a tremendous enthusiasm. Before we started this recording, I asked Sarah, what do you remember about Aries? And she said, it's fire. And we said, cardinal fire. So cardinal is goal-oriented and fire is the life force. So it's a goal-oriented life force energy, but its goal is to serve the life force. So the purpose of Aries is the service of life, which is, as Aries figures out eventually, is too big a goal. You have to pick certain things you're going to serve, but that's when you get to 3rd stage. Initially, there's just an instinctive desire to give to life. So if a person was born with this instinctive desire to give to life, they would literally have all their atoms and molecules scattered to the wind because they give everything they had to life. So you can't have that. You have to build a personality. You have to build an ego. So the 1st stage Aries goal is to build an ego and to build a really strong sense of identity and courage. And the 1st stage Aries wants to become somebody big and special, wants to develop their talents. I call 1st stage Aries the peacock because they want to create a beautiful display of these incredible iridescent feathers that they can stand before life with, so they can then be strong enough and big enough to give to life. That is the underlying motivation. But often the personality is not really fully aware of that, especially as it continues through 1st stage. So people spend 3 or 4 lifetimes in a stage, and a 1st stage Aries is kind of clean and innocent in how they express this desire for self. They attract people to them, who give things to them, who support them. They usually have a mother who spoils them when they're growing up. That's a very common experience in 1st stage Aries. And it's all just about me, 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 me. And they feel completely justified in being about me because unconsciously they know that they're being selfish for an unselfish reason. They are naturally generous, and this will show up at certain points in time when they're very giving to people, very giving to animals, but they are generally dominantly motivated by becoming great, by becoming the greatest, biggest, bestest version of them that could possibly be. So 1st stage Aries is a really good expression of what conventional sun sign astrology says about Aries. They're self-centered, they're brash, they're bold, they push their weight around. That's what generally a 1st stage Aries does, but they're doing it innocently and they're doing it for a positive purpose. After 3 or 4 lifetimes of this building of the ego, the soul realizes, okay, we have a bit of a bare framework of identity. Because the ironic thing is that the Aries soul is naturally selfless. And again, if they just came in being that selfless, all their atoms and molecules would disappear into the wind. So they've got to really build an ego. They've got to really build an identity. And they've got to make it very extreme in their 1st stage experience. Because once they're out of 1st stage, they've got to be able to remember some of it because they're naturally unselfish. They've got to be able to remember, yes, I have an identity, and yes, it's a worthwhile identity, and have to hold it together. It's about it's the basic lesson of 1st stage Aries. So they had to do it to an extreme so that they'll subconsciously remember it in order to carry it forward into the future. So once that habit of being a self has been established enough, the personality or the higher self starts to withdraw the support, starts to withdraw the drive in that direction. But personalities have inertia, they have habits. So the personality starts to panic, and the personality feels like, well, wait a minute, I wanted to become a big hero, I wanted to become a big famous person, I wanted to become really special, or more special, or more important than I already am, and it's not happening. And they start to panic, and they start to get very frustrated and very angry sometimes. This self-centeredness starts to become pathological sometimes. Now, for some Aries people, they just release it, and that's it. But it's a lot more common for them to get into this frantic phase. So when they're in this frantic phase, another very common experience is that they're in this state of panicked frustration. They end up hurting somebody that's close to them, or somebody or something that they care about. And they're so caught up in what they're doing that they don't even realize it until after it happened. So it's very traumatic, because suddenly something happened that you didn't expect to have happen, that when it happens, it suddenly wakes you up to realize, oh my God, I've been so involved in myself. I didn't even know how involved in myself I was. And I did a terrible, horrible thing because I was so self-centered. And that trauma, for some people, it can cause an immediate crash into second stage. For other people, it eats away at them over time. And they don't quite become the hero or the heroine they were supposed to be or thought they wanted to be. And so they slowly slide down in towards second stage. So in second stage Aries, the person has the natural generosity that is a core feature of Aries anyway, comes back. But along with it is a giant dose of guilt and this terror of being self-centered and being selfish. So they're naturally giving, and then they give out of guilt, and they give compulsively. So second stage Aries people, I call them the bubblegum machine or the doormat. The doormat's self-explanatory. People can always walk all over them and wipe their feet. And if Aries complains, then they can manipulate them by saying, well, you're being selfish. And then, oh my God, no, I can't be selfish. Oh, I'm sorry, was I upsetting you? This is the second stage Aries. One way you can tell a second stage Aries is they say, I'm sorry all the time. I drove my mother nuts when I was a little kid, because I always said, I'm sorry, over everything. And when she said, stop saying that, I said, oh, I'm sorry. But the bubblegum machine is basically, if you put a coin of guilt into the bubblegum machine, you'll get whatever you want. Because second stage Aries people misunderstand a person's strong desire and them getting upset about not getting their desire fulfilled. They mistake it for that person is in pain, and I can't hurt that person by denying them their wishes. So poor Aries is getting pulled everywhere. And an Aries parent is dominated by their children. An Aries mate is dominated by their partner. And if everybody pushes poor second stage Aries around, and poor second stage Aries goes, oh, what am I doing wrong? What can I do to make things better? And their lives are often kind of chaotic. So, but they're lovely, sweet, giving, beautiful people. It's interesting because in my family, we're all, well, not my father, but my mother and my brothers and I were all Aries, and we were all different stage Aries. And my mother was in second stage, and my brothers were in first stage. They're not now, but they were when I was growing up. And so, first and second stage Aries often find each other, because first stage Aries is give to me, give to me, give to me, and they're demanding. And second stage Aries is, oh yes, I'll give to you. Don't be upset. I'll make it better for you. So it's a very kind of perfect combination, this kind of marriage made in hell for the poor second stage Aries. But it certainly gave me a hands-on view of it, watching this whole situation unfold. So at any rate, at the end of second stage Aries, the person has been suffering so much, and there's often an experience that a person has who's in second, third stage Aries where they can't save someone else, because Aries is a savior. They will go, even a first stage Aries will, being so brash and self-centered and everything's about me, they're the ones that run into the burning building and save people, because it is this underlying sense of the oneness of life, and that's that soul instinct that we're all united. They'll just be instantaneously selfless in an emergency. So a second stage Aries is unable to save somebody else, and that's really creates a huge question. And they often start to also see the results of how they harm people by enabling them and by giving to them too much. And so they start to realize this isn't working. They're in pain because they have no boundaries. They can't say no. They don't, their self-esteem is usually low. The first stage Aries is the beautiful peacock. The second stage Aries always feels ugly. I wish I could be beautiful. I'm not beautiful. There's a memory somewhere I used to be. I wish I could be again. They want to get that first stage Aries piece back. Aries is also the most addictive sign of the zodiac, and all signs can get addictive for different reasons, but Aries becomes addictive because their soul has the deepest memory of the oneness of life and the bliss of that oneness of life. And when they are in a separated personality, you're no longer in that blissful, joyful state of oneness. And so addictive behaviors mimic that feeling of unity. So even first stage Aries can be really damaged by addiction, especially because it's all about me and I can have whatever I want. And if I want this substance or this exciting behavior, I can take it to an extreme. And second stage Aries is in pain all the time because they're giving themselves away and they have nothing for themselves. And so they will have addictive behavior to compensate. And there's the crash. Everybody gets a crash at the end of second stage of every sign. And so the second, third stage Aries has to figure out a way to look after themselves, but they cannot do it for their own sake. So a second, third stage Aries needs to recognize very clearly how naturally altruistic their soul is. They're the spiritual warrior, and the spiritual warrior fights on behalf of life itself. So it's always about that greater unity. And they need to recognize that in order to serve life, they must take care of themselves first. It's that adjust your own oxygen mask first, because you can't help anyone else if there's nothing left of you. And it's also very important at that point in time for Aries people to determine or decide what aspect of life they are going to serve, because they can't come in and give to everything that exists. You know, I've said that Aries is a sign that has eyes too big for its stomach. So they need to say, what is it I love more than anything else in this world? What is it I want to serve? What is it I want to give my attention to and my devotion to, my energy to perfecting and helping and building in this world? And say no to anything that doesn't serve that goal. Because when they do that, they develop discipline. Because the first stage Aries is the peacock, second stage Aries is the doormat in front of the bubblegum machine, third stage Aries is the disciplined expert. They can become, third stage Aries people can be criticized by other people because they are kind of too anal retentive, or they're far too disciplined. But what a lot of people don't realize is they need to be. Because if they don't have that really strong, structured life situation, they'll disappear into that oneness again. They'll disappear into the addictive behaviors. They'll disappear into giving themselves away to everything. And it'll be chaos. And in that discipline, third stage Aries usually takes the area of life or the areas of life, because they can serve more than one thing. They just can't do 10 things. They can take that area of life ahead in some way. They tend to really innovate, and in a very detailed way, they will innovate in their chosen arena of life that they serve. So they get so much knowledge and information that's so finely detailed and beautifully structured. And they can say no to everything that's going to get in the way of that. And their disciplined life, and often a disciplined spiritual life, unites them with that feeling of oneness again, so the addictive behaviors disappear. And the person's in third stage for several lifetimes, and they're going out and giving these very solid. It's interesting how third stage Aries almost becomes very, very, very material, almost very structured. Almost turns into the image of the next sign, which is Taurus, the earth sign, fixed earth. They fix the ideals that they serve into a very structured component of life. So that's the basic 3 stages of Aries. And that does not include the childhood patterns, although I did mention that in first stage Aries, that mom often spoils the child. That my book does go into the childhood patterns. It goes into relationship patterns. We will probably talk about that in other videos, but this is just the basic understanding of what people go through as they go through these stages. So any comments or questions, Sarah?
Yeah, I'm just curious, like, what do you, like the structured, it's just structured of their life. So they, like, is that, when you say structure, are you saying like organized, routine?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So if it's not structured and full of routine, there's this sense of kind of getting absorbed back into that.
Yeah.
Over the place.
Yeah, and over time, they're so much more dedicated to their purpose that everything everything in their day-to-day life is structured in order to serve that purpose, and in order to take good care of them, their physical being, and all of their necessary developments in order to serve that purpose. So it's almost like a military level of discipline in order to serve whatever chosen specialty. Third stage Aries is a specialist, they're a discipline specialist. And that doesn't mean to say they can't be spontaneous, because Aries is interesting. They're very self-conscious, but when they get lost in the moment, they're the most unself-conscious person you'll ever meet. They're just really spontaneous. So I'm not saying that a third stage Aries is so rigid that they're dried up and blow away in the dust like dust, but they are, and it's natural. For me, I mean, people who know me, they say, you're the most disciplined person I know. But to me, it's just an automatic, natural thing to do. I don't really give it a thought, but it's been many years building and developing this.
Yeah. And you have a big routine that you keep to every week for sure.
Yeah.
Is there specific professions or paths that people take? You said they're innovative. Is there specific careers? I don't want to like put them in a box, but is there certain?
Very, very, very good question, because there are not. So it's a very individual thing. You can probably look at a person's overall chart and really get a sense of what is this person going to be focused on.
No, that's good to know. I would hate for anyone to feel like this person's going to be a scientist and this is,
Yeah. Some of them are scientists.
Yeah. Well, no, I just, like that I would have like certain signs that are not, they're more progressive towards that type of career. So yeah, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was, I'm trying to remember his last name. I wish I had it at the moment. It's maybe, I don't know if you know your Star Wars, but the actor, his first name is Ewan, and he was in Star Wars. Can't remember his name. He's a guy who does motorcycle tours through Africa and Europe. He and his friends and his buddies. And I remember reading.
McGregor? No, it's not.
I think it's Ewan McGregor, because McGregor was the name that was coming out, and I was not sure if I was right about it. But I remember reading about how organized he was and how anal he is about everything he carries with him and how he packs up all his stuff. It's so perfectly put together. And I'm reading this about him thinking, man, this guy's a Virgo or an Aries. He's got to be either a Virgo or a third stage Aries. So I look up his birthday. Yeah, he's an Aries. He's a third stage Aries.
Probably, yeah. And the more you talk about it, I could totally see that you're an Aries too.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think we'll close here.